Welcome to On My Mind Monday, the show where I talk about what's on my mind today, February 17th, 2025. And there are a few things that are on my mind that I want to talk about, including saving money, Doge style. We're going to talk about deals. We're going to talk about the Bully-Pulpit. We're going to talk about move fast and break things. And we're going to talk about an upcoming battle that I see that maybe some are starting to notice, that something that's coming, and it's some kind of cracks in the foundation, as it were, of the winning coalition from the last election. So let's start with one of my favorite subjects, and that is saving money. Of course, those of you who know me know that I own cost optimization and expense reduction consultancy. That's what I do, and I help clients of mine push significant cash to their bottom line so that they can use that cash to fund their priorities. Well, I'm not the only one doing this, of course, and one of the things that we're seeing now in Washington, and we're seeing it really throughout the federal government, this Department of Governmental Efficiency, or DOGE, as it's been called, is finding all kinds of areas, millions upon millions of dollars, where really taxpayer money is being spent on things that the majority of taxpayers would be, frankly, appalled by. And so I want to applaud this effort because I think it's really important. Now, a lot of people say, in the scope of the federal budget doesn't mean a whole lot, or, these are things that have kind of fallen through the cracks, and so we are in danger of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I get those arguments. I understand. However, it doesn't really matter if these are significant areas or not. The fact of the matter is that most Americans really are not going to approve of a lot of the stuff that they're finding in these audits, especially when you look at a group like USAID, which, sure, they do a lot of great things, but when you're spending millions and millions of dollars on really kind of horrible type things and a lot of DEI type initiatives and things like that, while they may even in some cases, for the benefit of the doubt, I'll just give the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they're good-hearted, but they're wrong-headed. And these are not the things that the American taxpayer should be paying for. Americans are very generous people, and we will help out all kinds of things that we see as being needed. And so certainly there is a place for that. It's kind of like PBS. PBS should not be funded by the American taxpayer. By all means, if people want to donate to PBS like they do all the time, and they want to keep it afloat and they want to do that, great, no problem at all. But it's not something that should be taxpayer funded, especially when it is out of step with probably half of the country. So I applaud the efforts to save some money. Now, one of the things that they say in Silicon Valley, one of the kind of slogans that you'll hear is move fast and break things. Well, we're seeing that philosophy actually being played out now since the current administration has taken power just a few weeks ago. Move fast and break things. And they're finding that sometimes, though, moving fast and breaking things means that you break things that aren't necessarily really easy to bring back. And so maybe a little caution would be necessary. I mentioned on a prior week how sometimes administrations will want to try and push a bunch of stuff through early in an administration for a couple of reasons. First of which, they know that people only have a memory of so long, right? There's enough other stuff going on that they won't necessarily remember all the things that happened early on in an administration. Also, though, part of it seems to be we want to just get all of these things out there because we know a lot of this stuff is going to get challenged in the courts and such anyway. So let's just get it out there, and then we can deal with those challenges as they come in. And I get that. But when we're seeing people that are fired or furloughed from government jobs, and then it turns out, oh, these people were actually pretty necessary and we really needed them, well, you might want to rethink about how fast you're going and what you're breaking. So that's just something to keep in mind. On the kind of on the topic of, we're talking a little bit about saving money and working fast and all that kind of thing. Of course, the current president wrote a book back in the day called The Art of the Deal. And right now we're seeing a few deals that look to be forming, at least on the international policy stage. And these look like crappy deals. They're not good. I mean, the other day we had 3 Israeli hostages that were released, and we're very happy for their release. But with that came hundreds of convicted Palestinians that were released. So 3 to hundreds? And the 3 Israelis are not really any kind of military asset or intelligence asset per se, anything like that. Whereas a lot of these Palestinians, these were people that were convicted of doing some pretty heinous things. And they're the ones that are going to be planning upcoming attacks and all that kind of thing. This is just a bad deal. And I realize the Israelis want their hostages back, but at this point, again, like I said last week, the Palestinians have not shown themselves to be a group of people worthy of their own nation. They have continuously backed groups like Hamas who carry out unspeakable atrocities and use them, the people, as bullet and bomb shields. So I guess my thinking is you just kind of fight against them until they release all the hostages, or unfortunately all the hostages are gone, but you do everything to root them out, root and branch, completely pull them out, completely and utterly destroy them, even that if that means turning Gaza to glass. And I know that sounds terrible, but at the end of the day, that's about what we would be looking at. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but that's just kind of my idea. The other deal, though, was this idea of kind of the United States and Russia doing a deal regarding the Ukraine war, and kind of doing it without Ukraine even having a seat at the table. And of course, Zelensky has said, hey, any deal that doesn't involve us is not going to be something that we're going to go along with. And my fear is that the United States is going to try and strong arm the Ukrainians into a bad deal. Any deal that doesn't include Russia getting out of Ukraine altogether, and quite frankly, I would say restoring Ukraine's pre-2014 borders, should be a non-starter. Any deal that doesn't include Russia returning all the children and families that they have kidnapped should be a non-starter. As much as I'm not a fan of the International Criminal Court these days, they are a former client of mine, but as much as I'm not a fan of them these days, I also think it should be part of the deal that the Russians have to stand trial in the International Criminal Court for atrocities committed upon the Ukrainian people. We're talking about torture, rape, and murder. Not just wartime killing, but heinous acts of brutal murder and just horrible, unspeakable things done to the Ukrainians. The Russians need to stand trial for that. And I know these things aren't going to happen. It would be wishful thinking to think that they would. And that's why I think the United States needs to continue, along with the rest of the free world, to fund the Ukrainians who are willing to use their blood if we'll supply the treasure. So if they will use their blood, we supply the treasure to bankrupt the Russians and make them sacrifice their sons in unprecedented numbers until they get the idea and pull out, just like they did in Afghanistan, where they had superior firepower, but they couldn't play the long game. And so that's really what I'm looking for again. So again, deals, deals, deals. Are these good deals? I don't think so. I don't think so. So that kind of brings me back to something I was thinking about. You know, Teddy Roosevelt used to call the presidency the bully-pulpit, right? He used that word bully, you know, in a certain way. But I'm kind of wondering if the current administration is kind of using it as a bully pulpit, in that we will bully or you know, talk tough and act tough with the Canadians or the Panamanians or the Colombians or, you know, the Mexicans. But it seems like we're not talking so tough when it comes to the Russians. It seems like we're not talking so tough even when it comes to the Chinese, the communist Chinese, who are really one of our top adversaries. I don't know. We'll have to see. But it seems, kind of going hand in glove with the discussion on deals, we seem to be pretty willing to cede a whole lot to the Russians. And it kind of makes me wonder why. Now, you know, there are suspected reasons regarding people who may have just been confirmed to the cabinet that might be Russian assets, but we don't know. So that said, you know, let's see if this bully pulpit is more than just kind of trying to beat weaker powers on the world stage into capitulating to what the United States wants. I don't know. We'll see. Lastly, well, second to lastly, one of the things that I'm starting to see, you know, as you take a look at social media and you look at these things, you're seeing kind of a showdown that is looming. And I've seen this coming for a very long time, and now I'm really starting to see it. And I would see the pragmatic populists on one hand and religious conservatives on the other hand. So the pragmatic populists are people like the president or like Elon Musk and that kind of thing. And the religious conservatives are going to be the folks that have faith-based. They might be Catholic, they might be Jewish, they might be Protestant, they might be all kinds of things, but they have an agenda as well. And both of them, each of them is kind of using the other to kind of eliminate the woke left. And I get that. I get that they kind of have this common enemy, and the whole idea of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But what happens when you've beaten down that enemy to a certain degree, where then you're starting to look at the other side, and we're seeing more of that because the things that the populist pragmatic side is espousing is really in many ways very virtueless. And then the RCs, the religious conservatives on the other side, are saying, wait a minute here. We're looking at things where we have kind of justified the ends by, we've justified the means by the ends. And that's not really the way we want to keep going. My fear is that, of course, the religious conservatives have excused and justified so much that they're now finding themselves in a bit of a corner. Each side kind of believes that they're using the other to get their ends, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Well, the last thing that I was just going to mention had to do with just something that had been trending online that seemed kind of cool, at least to me. I grew up in Michigan, and we are right next to Canada. We're neighbors with Canada, and we kind of had a little brotherly give and take with our Canadian neighbors in that regard. And so, of course, it warmed the cockles of my heart that when the Canadians wanted to boo the U.S. national anthem over a hockey game the other night. They got their backsides handed to them, both on the ice and in the fistfights that ensued. So, not the biggest hockey fan in the world, but it kind of warmed my heart to see that, especially since hockey is supposed to be the thing that Canadians are actually good at. So, who knows? Anyway, that's what's on my mind on this Monday, February 17th, 2025. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.